On behalf of beloved Moria and beloved Saint Germain, I'd like to welcome all of you to this inaugural seminar, which is intended to launch our first outreach module entitled Ecce Deus. I think that it is, in one sense, most appropriate that we are here in Vermont on a day which is overcast, with the rain coming down quite a bit. It is not exactly the most sunny and encouraging day. And for those of you in the altar groups in temples, those of you who in future years will hear this seminar, who aspire to be lay shepherds and shepherd templars of the temple, you will, when you are sitting down for the very first time to plan your outreach efforts, you might find yourself confronted with just this kind of spiritual atmosphere, where there isn't necessarily a great bonfire of enthusiasm within your own world, where there may not be a large contingency of torchbearers that are all together in one place, that are very enthusiastic. It might be just 2 or 3 individuals who are gathered together as an altar group that are beginning the penetration of the Master's work into one of the larger metropolitan cities or less populated areas around the world. So you will be faced with the challenge of beginning where you are, not only with your numbers of those who are in support of your effort, but beginning where you are with your own force field, with your own state of emotions, your own heart flame, and perhaps less than the full thrust of fiery zeal and momentum which is going to carry you forth. It's one thing if you find yourself assigned as a minister to one of the denominations of the Protestant or Catholic faith or one of the other world religions, where you move to an area and there's a church that's already built and a congregation that's been coming for hundreds of years perhaps. They've got the rhythm and the momentum already built up, and maybe there's a parsonage waiting for you, a full salary, school for children. All you have to do is kind of slip in and make sure you've got your first message ready on the first Sunday that you have to speak. It's quite another when you don't have that full panoply of resources available to you, and you've got to start almost with next to nothing. And you look around and there are those stalwart few who are on the physical with you. We would like to begin with that state of affairs because, in a sense, for our activity, the Temple of the Presence, that is pretty much going to be the way that it is. I would like to say to you that in some respects, your opportunities are far greater, because it does require that you summon from within yourself spiritual resources and attainment that you may not have known was within you, and which may otherwise never have come forth. In other words, if it was just a simple coasting along in an already established momentum, you would not necessarily have the same exertion of your own heart flame and God determination to overcome those obstacles and to be victorious. So that is a very appropriate place for us to begin. I would like to say that you should know that we who stand before you, Carolyn and I, are not simply preaching a path which we ourselves have not walked. Indeed, we have set the example and walked every step of the way that you are called upon in your outreach efforts to walk. We're now in Vermont, in northern Vermont. We have a number of students who have come down from Canada, some from Quebec, some from Toronto. And I'm reminded of the very earliest days when Carolyn and I were beginning our work with beloved Moria, when we too spent a period of time in Toronto. And I guess you might say that we were the Temple of the Presence, all of its members. We had 2 honorary members in our daughters, Claire and Maria, but the 4 of us were the only 4 members of the Temple of the Presence as an Ascended Master activity at that time. And we were faced with the fact that there was not a support group around us. We didn't have a congregation, we didn't have a heart center, or any of the other things that you've come to appreciate in an Ascended Master activity. So we have been there, and we know every step of the path that you are called upon to walk as you motivate yourselves and find the strength and inspiration from within your own heart to conduct these classes and to bring forth this outreach. So perhaps we can speak a little bit from our own experience in the sense that you should know that even then, we felt your hearts. We knew that all of you were in embodiment and that the recollection of your own God presence and the witness to you that it was lawful for you to identify yourself with your mighty I Am presence, we knew that this was the Master's intent, that the time of that dispensation for the light bearers of the earth had come, and that no one else really was emphasizing or speaking that simple, straightforward encouragement to the hearts of the students of the Ascended Masters. In fact, many of the students had entered into a downtrodden spiral of identifying with lesser aspects of themselves than their blessed mighty I Am presence, and the whole course of the Ascended Masters' activities had veered from its vertical ascent into the heart of the God presence. And we appreciated quite well how important it was for the work to get back on track. So, if you can, for a moment, suspend the outer mind and enter into your hearts, and from the vantage point of your hearts, become one with the divine mind of your own mighty I Am presence, not just your Christ self, but of your own mighty I Am presence. In that divine mind, you become aware of the poignancy of life on this earth, of how heart-rending and touching it is from the divine standpoint. Because from within that heart of your God presence and that all-seeing eye of your mighty I Am presence, you look out across the face of the earth and you see a vast drama that is being outpictured. Remember now, in this divine mind, you're not limited to the snapshot of a given instant in time called the present moment, but you encapsulate past, present, and future in the eternal allness of the Godhead. So you are aware of the great drama of the millions of life waves, of the individualized mighty I Am presences that long ago elected to assign themselves by an act of their own volition, mind you, not a passive act, but an act of self-will on the part of the God presence to attach itself to this planet, to this system of worlds, and to gain mastery over thought and feeling, over matter, to attain that mastery by projecting that heart flame of the presence down into the denser worlds and hopefully hold conscious connection always with this divine mind in the presence, in the person of the Holy Christ self, and to never lose that sense of oneness with the allness of the individual mighty I Am presence. Long ago, this had been begun by the divine incarnation of billions of mighty I Am presences who came to this earth as great, starry, august presences, God individualized. And through a process that is not a part of the course material of this class, through that process, the extension of that blessed presence became ensnarled in the matter planes. The heart flame, the outer mind and feelings and memory became so focused on the outer manifestation of those planes that it went to sleep and clean forgot the origin of that blessed heart flame in the heart and the seat of the higher self. All of this is something that your mighty I Am presence holds in its conscious awareness even now. And so for your higher self, it is a very heart-rending thing to have to be aware of all of the glory that is awaiting the sons and daughters of God and the children of God that they do not know for themselves, and how one embodiment after another, they come into embodiment blinded by matter, blinded by the karma of previous sowings, crippled and limited in their capacity to spread their wings and to exert the divine authority of the God presence, coming into and out of embodiment, making very little real progress towards self-mastery. Good life streams, yes. Wholesome, worthy, yes. Living a happy existence or salt and pepper of good and not so good experiences, but never breaking free of the gravity pull of the earth and soaring back into the divine nature. So this is an awareness that is held in the heart of your I Am presence, as well as, of course, in the hearts of the Ascended Masters. And in a sense, it is like a drama. I'd like to relate it to a drama that was outpictured recently, a film that was written about 8 or 9 years ago, I guess, by this time, which was a love story. The interesting thing about this story is that the two partners do not ever meet until the very final scene of the entire movie. And so we, as the audience, we're watching two individuals on opposite ends of the coast who are, we know, destined to find each other and to fall in love and to have a wonderful life together. And the question is, what are the chain reaction of circumstances that are going to have to come to pass in order for them to meet and to recognize one another, to fall in love, and to fulfill the divine destiny that they have? And of course, this is the plot line and the dramatic story device of that particular film. And in a very real sense, from the standpoint of the divine mind of the all-seeing eye of God, of the ascended masters, and of your own God presence. That is true for each and every life stream, every light bearer on the planet. What is possible for a life stream in a given embodiment is far greater than what is normally realized by that very life stream. There is a gulf between what they could have achieved and what is, in fact, accomplished by the end of the embodiment. And that makes for a tremendous drama at inner levels on the hearts of the ascended masters and on the hearts of your own blessed God presence, to realize what can happen, what is possible of achievement. And when individuals come up short for whatever reason, that really is the definition of a tragedy. In the writings of beloved Saint Germain, as Francis Bacon, when he penned the Shakespearean plays, many of his plays, as you know, were tragedies. And they used this device as well in the case of Romeo and Juliet. Here were two individuals who were destined to be together and to not only fall in love, but to spend their lives together. And yet, what happens is they believe falsehoods. And because of this false belief, which they then act on, tragedy results. What makes it so sad is that it didn't need to be that way at all. It could have been otherwise. It could have been so very magnificent and wonderful. And it only was the way it was because the mind of these two individuals was led to believe a falsehood and act upon that falsehood when it really didn't need to, when neither one needed to do so. And so it is from the standpoint of the ascended masters and the standpoint of the blessed God presence. The capacity for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of life streams to come into the full mastery of their mighty I Am presence in this very incarnation is far greater than individuals give themselves credit for. And that is our mission as torchbearers of the temple, to equip more and more and more life streams with the sure and certain knowledge of their true relationship to their mighty I Am presence, of the power and authority that they are able to wield in this world, drawing down the infinite creative power of the God that made the whole macrocosm, which is focused in their own individual I Am presence, to know that as the truth of their being and to begin to draw it forth. That is all that is possible to be done in this next 2,000-year cycle of the dawning golden age of Saint Germain. For it to happen, there is a certain shackle of ignorance and blindness and superstition that is like the scales that were on the eyes of St. Paul, that is in fact more powerful than any iron manacle that ever bound the hands or feet of any prisoner in any dungeon anywhere. These shackles of self-imposed limitation that human beings that should also be knowing themselves as firstborn sons and daughters of God have suffered themselves to be crippled spiritually, limited, finite, puny, impotent human beings, the butt of every other force around them to move them about like pawns on a chessboard, when all the while the power of infinity was there, trembling on the lip of the cup of their own heart flame and residing in the infinite power of their mighty I Am presence. And it is for us to strip away all of that ignorance and blindness and superstition and lack of caring, and to almost, as it were, be the midwife of the God presence of other life streams, to assist at the birth of the Holy Christ self of more and more and more life streams. This is the supreme privilege which you as torchbearers of the temple have. Perhaps you have read about the times when beloved Saint Germain would take a disciple into one of the physical retreats and arrange for that life stream to sit in the ascension chair. And after a period of adjustment, to have a group of ascended masters, 12 in number quite often, stand round about that life stream and assist in the final initiatory elevation of that life stream for eternity, from the bonds of mortality into the victory of the ascension. What a privilege, you say, to assist such a one. But brothers and sisters, that privilege is yours. That privilege is yours if you elect to use it. I'm sure that you know a few of the people who are here today, the brothers and sisters who are here today. I'm sure you know of many others who are already in the temple, very precious life streams. Who could ever put a value on the beauty and the wonderful heart flames of those who are already members of our activity? But those who are already members are just a mere pittance by comparison to hundreds of thousands of other just as precious, wonderful life streams who are alive somewhere doing something right now in the world. They have the same destiny as you and I. They came into this embodiment out of the retreats of the Brotherhood, out of the schoolrooms and the octaves of light. They had been shown the opportunity that they could, in fact, win their ascensions. And they are in the world right now, kind of like Saul was before he met Jesus on the road to Emmaus. They haven't yet met their destiny, but they are just as worthy. And here's the razor's edge of why this is so important. It is still eminently possible in this lifetime for those life streams to win their ascensions in this embodiment. If someone gives them a book, if someone puts up a poster, rents a room in a bank or a health food store, puts on a public service announcement, puts a flyer in their hand, perhaps holds these courses of Ecce Deus, it is possible for those life streams to catch fire, just as you have caught fire. And it is possible for you to render that service to those individuals and be the kindling point that starts and sparks their liberation on the path. I hope that all of you can recall to your memory those moments when the ascended masters have so filled the room with their living presence and elevated your attunement to the point when it was possible for you to commune directly with your own God self, and for you to no longer make a division between you and your presence, for you to drink in the worth of your God self, to know that it was the truth of being, that you were not just a human being, not just a soul, but that you were this undivided expression of your mighty I Am presence in this world of form. I hope that you have had that gift not once but many times, and that you can recall it. And I hope that you can have a sense of co-measurement of what it means to have that conviction in your hip pocket, to pull it out at crises in your life, to remind yourself of it, and to have it be the pole star of identity, the North Star that guides your course through life. If that is true for you, consider what it means to have the opportunity of providing that difference for other life streams as well. It is one of the most supreme privileges that God has given to each and every one of us. Some have often been enamored of the living presence of the ascended masters. It's quite natural. When we are drawn within the inner electronic circle of any ascended master, it's like we have had the gates of the Garden of Eden thrown open, and there's all of this bliss and joy and happiness pouring forth, and every form of misery seems to have vanished away. And there's a natural desire to want to always, always remain within that embrace, that intimate embrace of the Master's living presence. The key to greater affinity and association with any ascended master, the greatest key of all, is that you make yourself a part of that master's service to life. That you make yourself a useful vehicle through which that master can reach through the veil and work and operate through your vessel to extend that master's presence and message and mission across the face of the earth. So interestingly enough, by losing yourself in love, by worrying more about the welfare and happiness and the discovery of other life streams, forgetting about yourself, fueling your motive out of this selfless compassion and putting that into motion as service, at the very time that you are helping others, you are also gaining the very mastery that everyone must gain in order to achieve the ascension for themselves. The ascension is not a selfish path. It is not a solitary path where you can become a hermit and backpack into the wilderness somewhere and just sit in the lotus posture and meditate your way into the ascension. That is not the path of God mastery. This path outlined by the ascended masters is one of drawing down into this world all that is in the world of your electronic body, bringing that down and thrusting it out into the matter world, and having the God presence take its dominion out here in time and space. So the great merit and benefit of taking on the mission of Ecce Deus is that it gives you an opportunity to open your own heart and let the fuel and compassion of divine love motivate you. I promise you that if you will prime the pump of your heart with the compassion for those other life streams, first the 10,000 torchbearers and then the outer rings beyond those first 10,000, if you will send your love forth, it will initiate an action that will roll on and expand and expand and expand. And you will not wake up and one morning find that you no longer have any motivation. You no longer have the zeal or the zest for this path. I think if you look at Carolyn and I, you'll notice that we have never once been bored with this work. It's never been just the same old thing over and over again. Oh, why can't we do something different? I don't think you've ever seen us come in with less than full enthusiasm, yawning and kind of stretching and just putting ourselves through the motions. Because love is a fiery furnace and a fuel that is really the immortal fires that burn in the center of all creation. It keeps the whole great wheel of cosmos turning in space because the fires of love are never banked. They're never smoldering and going out. And you will inspire yourself and surprise yourself if you can think about those other most precious life streams. It really shouldn't enter your mind whether it happens to be a baby that came forth from your own body or your own loins, that you've come to love because it's your own flesh and blood. What if those life streams out there were your children in other embodiments? What if they were your brothers and sisters in other embodiments, your fathers and mothers, your compatriots as they have been? Down through the many centuries, we have forged heart ties to thousands and thousands of life streams. That if we had the activation of that Akashic record, they would be just as precious to us today as any outer blood relative or friend might be in this embodiment. Yet here we pass like ships in the night because the tie hasn't been activated in this embodiment. But the heart knows and the presence knows. And if you will let your heart pour forth its love, you too will find the oomph to move through the opposition that naturally comes up whenever you try to bring the word of deliverance to anyone. That subject is the subject for another day, but I will just simply mention to you that around the heart flame of every light bearer on the planet, there is a rind. There is a thickened callus of calcified tissue we call the human ego. It is a not identity that nevertheless has a temporary existence. And it has an instinctive sense of self-preservation. And on the day or the week or the month when that life stream might be slated to see a poster and come to a meeting, this human ego of that life stream has certain psychic capabilities which are instinctive. It is a sense of self-preservation, and it will rise up and seek to smother the sword of truth that would be the cleavage of its own human nature so that the heart flame could go free. So when you get ready to give a lecture or get a program to give Ecce Deus together, you may well feel like you have to move through lead in order to get off the dime, to stop planning, and actually start doing the thing. And part of that is this impersonal rising up of this subconscious substance within those who are intended to be freed of that part of their self which is reluctant and rebellious about going into the violet flame and being no more. So we will have more to say about that as the weekend progresses. But it is the flame of love and compassion for the mighty I Am presence of the other life streams that should fuel your service to life. It certainly was that flame of love that motivated our own beloved Jesus, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. He came to know the heart flames of mankind. He called them little lambs, a little newborn lamb, white fleece, innocent, vulnerable, dependent on its mother, dependent upon the shepherd, but in a sense very innocent and pure as the new-driven snow. That is the way it is with that heart flame of embodied mankind, regardless of the age or the outer expression. The heart flame that is sent forth by the mighty I Am presence is this Lamb of God. And beloved Jesus had a great moving compassion for those heart flames. It was his reason for being. There was one time when his disciples came to him. He'd been sitting in prayer or meditation. They came to him and said to him, "Master, eat." And he said, "I have meat to eat that ye know not of." Therefore the disciples talked to each other, and they said, "Who's brought the master food?" And we didn't know it. And Jesus shook his head and said, "My meat is to do the will of him that sent me and finish his work. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest. I say unto you, lift up your eyes, look on the fields. Behold, they are white already to the harvest. He that reapeth receiveth wages and gathereth fruit unto life eternal. Both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. One soweth, and another reapeth. Reap whereupon ye bestow no labor. Other men labored, and ye are entered into their labors." In another place, speaking in this same vein, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for his sheep. He that is an hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and I am known of mine. As the Father hath given me, even so know I the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. Other sheep have I which are not of this fold. Them also must I bring. They shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life that I might take it up again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down and to take it up. This commandment have I received of my Father." Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in the synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, healing every sickness and every disease among the people. When he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep, having no shepherd. Then he said unto his disciples, The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers unto his harvest. This is the divine commission that you have from beloved Sanat Kumara and beloved Lord Maitreya as you take forth Ecce Deus. It is the commission which Jesus said in his closing moments after the resurrection, at the very moment of the ascension, as he conferred the baptism and the mantle upon his disciples to carry his message to them. He said, All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Now, I have mentioned to you before about this divine perspective that is held in the heart of your own Holy Christ self and mighty I am presence. It is something that is very close when we are drawn into the meditations of the Brotherhood, when the various masters come fresh from the council chambers. That great brooding heart and mind of the entire spirit of the Great White Brotherhood, as it is seeking to respond to the changing complexion of world events and of how to awaken the mankind of earth. It is all with this goal in mind of how to bring about the awakening of the hearts of embodied mankind and the midwifing of the rebirth of the Christ self of that individual, the overshadowing of their holy Christ self, and the ability of that Christ to suffuse its consciousness through the heart and through the four lower bodies to where the outer self once again knows of its oneness with the mighty I Am presence. That is the work that we are about with Ecce Deus. It is to provide a framework in which life can be lived and understood. You, as torchbearers, should understand that you have something invaluable to give to the world. Far from coming at this from the standpoint of an apologetic sense, you should understand that you have a brand new and quite different perspective to give to the world, having to do with the teachings of the Ascended Masters, having to do with the whole message of God Individualized. We have been in the presence of beloved Sanat Kumara when that perspective has been impressed upon us more and more, together with that flame of the compassion of divine love. You need look no further than beloved Sanat Kumara for your inspiration. We all have him to thank for the preservation of this earth as a platform of evolution, for us to work out this mastery of our God presence. Were it not that he had that compassion and that love millions of years ago, this earth would be like some of the other asteroid belts already are in the outer circumferences of our solar system. And it's not to say that we would not be somewhere. Yes, we would. But we would not necessarily have had the time frame and the opportunity preserved for us that we do now. So the entire spirit of the Ascended Masters looks to that time when beloved Sanat Kumara had enough love and compassion to continue to beat the hearts, the threefold flame of the mankind of this earth. And that furnace of his love has been burning continuously now for many millions of years. There was an occasion during the months leading up to the very first quarterly conference of the Temple of the Presence, when not only Sanat Kumara, but all of the seven holy Kumaras stepped forth the inner atmosphere in our heart center in Redlands, California, and revealed their capacity to sustain their momentum over these many millions of years, their enthusiasm for the path. You might think, after so long, that they might get discouraged, that they might get bored because of the monotony of the way in which human beings make the same mistakes 1,000 times over. But they do not, nor do they get exasperated or discouraged. And one of the keys is they have this round robin of love between these magnificent, illustrious, statuesque, tall masters, the great Kumaras. They infuse one another. They reinforce one another's heart flames. And as that love makes the circuit from one heart to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, each adds a momentum and each adds an impetus. And so that circle of fire just builds and builds and builds. And you realize that it would be impossible for those immortal fires of that love to ever burn out or to ever expire. Indeed, they do not. And that momentum goes on and on and on. This willingness of beloved Sanat Kumara to have that compassion and great love, not just for the embodied heart flames of mankind, but literally as himself a shepherd of the God presences of those millions of life waves attached to this earth. His concern was that they have every opportunity to complete their round of incarnations as quickly and meritoriously as possible, and to rise once again in the ascension. And so he made himself a living sacrifice, giving of himself in ways that were not karmically required to sustain the threefold flame of the Spirit on the heart flames of embodied mankind, so that those God presences could come forth and complete their work. I have to tell you that in one very real way, beloved Sanat Kumara is the reason why many of the adepts and the initiates of this and past ages agreed to come to the earth, because he is of such a persuasive nature that when he would regale them with the great glories of coming to this earth on a mission of guardianship and a mission of salvation, they were so caught up in his enthusiasm and his can-do, will-do, must-do attitude that, of course, they said, well, with this kind of backing, how can we fail? And they agreed to come and to be an embodiment, and here we are, you and I, and the Ascended Masters on their side of the veil, the living embodiment of that great master plan of Sanat Kumara started so very long ago. We have, as a civilization, clawed our way back to the present moment. And oh, what an arduous, and rocky path it has been, looking back over our shoulders. What obstacles have been overcome? What horrors of error and what ignominious treatment all the way back, well before the fall of Atlantis, have we come to where we see the mighty I Am Presence, God individualized, before us in the physical. A totally different teaching than ever was taught. I mean, I could turn to places in the sacred scriptures where it talks about man being dust of the earth, talks about man being nothing but a ephemeral wind that is gone as quickly as it comes and it's never remembered where it stood before. Oh my goodness, all the things that people have had pressed upon their precious, malleable thoughts and feelings that they have bought into, that they have inflicted upon themselves. Everybody has said, oh, thank you for that crown of thorns. Let me press it into my brow. Let me flagellate myself with this thought of limitation about who and what I am as a human being, as a mere mortal, as a sinner in the hands of an angry God. Perhaps worst of all, maybe nothing more than the top of the evolutionary chain of animal life, a Homo sapien, a Homo erectus, standing upright on 2 feet, having an opposable thumb, and a far smaller but more complex gray matter in the dura mater and pia mater of the brain, making this human species just a little more complex, a few million years ahead of the nearest primate relative, the chimpanzee or the gorilla or what have you, trying to stay a little bit ahead of the rest of the animal kingdom. Across the face of the earth, people are quite proud of the fact that they no longer have to believe in God or miracles or spiritual things, but that they have come to the liberating awareness that there are no such things and that they're just this person that's here for a while, and maybe they persist in the DNA that they pass on to future generations, if at all. That is not the truth. There before you is the truth. It has been paid for with the blood of the ascended masters, their life's blood and their radiation, dearly paid for, that we might know of the mighty I Am Presence. Few there are across the face of the earth who have ever been so bold or inspired as to know that they themselves were their mighty I Am Presence in action in this world of form. Not theoretically, not mañana, not yesterday, but ahora, in the eternal now, that they were their mighty I Am Presence. You are they. That is the torch that has been kindled for you, that you are to carry across the face of the earth. It must become a new ideology that the world believes in. Believe it or not, everybody lives by an ideology. Ideologies are the most powerful things in the face of the earth. What is an ideology? An ideology is a worldview that people fit into, and then they motivate themselves because they believe a certain way that life is made up. Quite often, some of the most powerful are emotionally fueled ideologies based on religion. You can see that a lot of places around the world where religious beliefs fuel an outlook on what life really is, what's going on out here, who is behind it all, what's behind it all. And based on that ideology, people give up their lives. People live and die and spend a whole life doing whatever it is that they do based on a belief structure. And in fact, not having a belief in God is also an ideology. not believing in an afterlife or the ascension. That is also an ideology, which is eat, drink, be merry, make as much money as you can, live as well as you can, because the time's going to be when you are not anymore. And so while you're here, you might as well scramble up on the backs of others and enjoy your life as best you can. So unfortunately, for a lot of our modern world, having had stripped away from them religious superstitions, they're left with nothing but a hedonistic, pleasure-driven ideology that says there's nothing more to life than what you see, and when we die, that's the end of us. Therefore, all bets are off. Everybody gets to do what they decide is best in their own eyes, and someday we'll all blink out and will be no more. So the world is still driven by many of those, and what the world desperately needs is to know the story of God individualized, to know from whence they've come, that they have come from out the great central sun as these great, august, illustrious God presences, that they have gone to sleep in the earth for thousands of embodiments, and that it is time to wake up and to become whom they have always been, the mighty I Am presence. Behold, the God-realized man and God-realized woman. That is the message of Ecce Deus.
Sign-up sheets are at the back door for all those ready to go on the road. I'm kidding, of course. I'm sure that after such an address, and those who will hear this in the future, there will be many inspired, just as we all were at the call of Sanat Kumara, reinforced once again through the Brotherhood's messengers to move mountains to bring about a freedom that the world has yet to realize. I'd like to give you a few moments to refresh yourself, for El Moria would like to address you. Thank you.